I'm of the approach that all blockchains will be speaking to each other at some point. I mean, I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point. Cosmos allows all chains to be speaking to each other. So why don't we build a Cosmos-wide application building primarily on Cosmos SDK-based chains? We have actually decided to move away from our own smart contracts and only deploy front end. So really, we're very much just focused on user experience. Theoretically, AI is going to be able to make better financial decisions with our money than our meager human brains can. So we think that's sort of where things are headed, is AI is going to be managing our money.
Welcome to the Interop. I'm here with Daniel Machlup. He's the CEO and founder at FortyTwo. They're building a natural language intense protocol. Otherwise, you can also say that they're building AI agents for DeFi and specifically in the interchain space, although their vision does expand into the broader crypto ecosystem and DeFi ecosystem. Before we get started, please remember that none of what we discuss here on the Interop is investment advice. You should always do your own research. And also, FortyTwo Finance is a portfolio company of Interop Ventures. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop, and be sure to stay with us. We're validating on a handful of networks, and you can find Interop in the active set. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hey Seb, thanks for welcoming me on today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I'm excited to finally get you on the podcast because I think you guys are building really a great product, and one that I can't wait to be sort of live on mainnet and with all the features that you guys are implementing, so that I can use it. I think this is a product that I really want to use, and one that I think a lot of folks in the interchain are going to want to use as well. So yeah, a bit of background, like how did you come to want to solve this problem?
So yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think as with all startups, it was a constant iteration process. We started on something pretty different, and then once we realized that wasn't going to come to fruition, we were just speaking to a lot of users and really, like, I guess, getting in touch with where crypto touches the ground again, so to speak, and like what are the fundamental needs of the ecosystem. But yeah, I think just going back into, like, I guess, my quick background. I mean, I studied finance, worked in banking, worked in fintech, worked in venture capital. I was at Binance Labs for a little while, and then started FortyTwo, which was originally in a very, very different space. We were actually building on something on Osmosis to begin with, and sort of moved off that. Osmosis, as you know, Seb, obviously hits a lot of roadblocks along their launch process, and we sort of took a step back at that point and realized why we were already building within the Cosmos ecosystem, and I'm of the approach that all blockchains will be speaking to each other at some point. I mean, I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point in time. But this was 2 years ago when I was like, why are we building on only one chain when firstly all blockchains are going to be speaking to each other, and secondly Cosmos allows all chains to be speaking to each other. So like, why don't we build a Cosmos-wide application? Built off, like, I guess, the Cosmos SDK, or building primarily on Cosmos SDK based chains. So we started just building. We wanted to build a cross chain app, and then we just started, like, realizing how many issues users have with navigating an interchain ecosystem. So at the time, it was like relatively complex to even just get your tokens from one IBC enabled chain to another IBC enabled chain. Never mind staking or earning yields across different chains. So we were just like, how do we actually solve for that, which will hopefully bring users into the crypto ecosystem, users that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, there's definitely been some pretty significant improvements on the interchain stack side in terms of being able to do the sort of things that you described, right? Like having accounts on one chain that are enabling transactions on another chain is really it's sort of like magic when it works, right? And most of the times it does work, but like to just see that in in production and have that working in lots of protocols in Cosmos is fantastic. And I think if we are aligned with the idea that there will be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of individual blockchain applications or sovereign applications in the form of, either app chains or L2s, you kind of need that. You need that interoperability and message passing ability as a first principle, as a primitive. And this is why I think we're all bullish on the Cosmos stack, primarily because of these features that the stack has embedded within it. How are you guys making use of that? At FortyTwo, like how are you leveraging some of these unique features that the Cosmos stack provides?
Yeah, so that's actually a very interesting question with a very interesting answer, I would say. But we are obviously still a pretty early stage team. I mean, although it was founded in a very different space, we pivoted, and I'd say at least 2 or 3 times along the way to find where we're headed towards now. And we started off specifically focusing on Cosmos SDK enabled chains. And the way that was built was we were working with infrastructure providers that essentially allow us to deploy seamless smart contracts across a variety of chains very quickly. However, as we've been building that out, we started, and also this is just through iterating, speaking to users, understanding the legal landscape, understanding the tech landscape, we've actually now moved away from deploying our own smart contracts. So the way we had originally built the infrastructure was to deploy one smart contract on an infrastructure provider and allow that smart contract to scale across IBC chains extremely quickly. However, now we have actually decided to move away from our own smart contracts and only deploy front end. So really, we're very much just focused on user experience. UX and UI is like our bread and butter these days. How do we make that better? And some of our sort of findings along the way, moving away from only focusing on or from deploying smart contracts across chains and moving towards only UX and UI, it's got a few advantages for us. Firstly, we don't have all of the legal risk associated with deploying your own smart contracts and therefore managing users' funds. We also don't have, we don't need to be reliant on only Cosmos enabled chains, because the fact that we can now deploy our smart contracts, the fact that we can now integrate across any chain without deploying smart contracts means we can actually move into other ecosystems such as Solana, such as Ethereum, the L2s, because once again, we are not deploying any smart contracts. We're simply doing UX and UI. So although we started very much reliant on the Cosmos enabled technology, we have now to a large degree moved away from being reliant on that technology. Although it is good tech and there's amazing infrastructure providers in the space that we are still reliant on and still are implementing, we ourselves are not implementing that technology.
So who is the product for, and what should people expect when using FortyTwo?
Yeah. So the product is for people that want to use DeFi and get access to the variety of DeFi opportunities, but don't have the capacity or resources to be doing all of their own research, to be following all the trends, to be following the right people on Twitter, to enabling Twitter notifications for the right people. It's for people that sort of want what I would say to a large degree is like lazy DeFi. You want to be able to, for example, ape into a meme coin or perform a specific swap or stake into a stable sort of real yield vault. It's for those types of people that don't have the capacity to be doing all of their own research, which funnily enough is the user like myself. I think while I was building FortyTwo, obviously as a startup founder, you've got a lot of things to focus on in terms of the team, keeping it together, the marketing, fundraising, etc., etc. Founders don't necessarily have the time to be reading up on every DeFi protocol that launches and trying to become eligible for every airdrop. So through this process, I was like, I would actually love something like FortyTwo where I could essentially ask an AI bot something along the lines of, what should I be doing with this? What should I be doing with my assets? What are the latest airdrops coming out? How do I become eligible for them? Help me do it. So it's for the people that don't have full capacity to spend researching DeFi.
Yeah, one of the ways that I've been using AI for research is actually using Twitter's LLM, the Grok LLM, and I basically will ask it a question like, "What are the top airdrops right now, and who's talking about them?" Or what are the newest DeFi protocols that people are talking about on Twitter by number of likes or something, and generally I don't know that it actually can integrate sort of the metrics such as like number of likes or a number of impressions when you're asking it, but it generally responds with like some pretty good directions in which I should be doing my research, right? Because there's like so much stuff happening on Twitter, and there's like so many different kind of pockets of crypto Twitter that you don't necessarily have access to if you're just following your feed. And I found that the LLM there has been a good way to kickstart, some research. Oh, like I didn't know about this thing. Like, okay, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole and go check it out. And I think there's a really big potential there for these kinds of pre-made prompts that say like a product like FortyTwo could have, that would just automatically be doing that research for people, maybe on Twitter, maybe on Discord, like maybe capturing the data there and having really well engineered prompts that are getting alpha, basically. Like you kind of want to like utilize the AI agent as a way to generate alpha. You know what I'm saying?
Completely. And it's certainly not getting any worse, that tech, right? It's only going to get better and better in the next few months and years. Also, I saw today a company, it's actually a Web 2 company that we base a lot of we get a lot of inspiration from, I would say, is one called Perplexity AI, which is essentially a cross between Google and ChatGPT. So what it does is it like scans the internet and consolidates it for you in your own little mini web page. So we saw today that Perplexity raised $250 million, which is quite a big thing. And I mean, that's essentially an AI agent, but for Web 2, just not for DeFi. So that's what we're basing it off for DeFi.
I think you were telling me about this other one called Brian Knows. Was that you? Yeah. So Brian Knows, essentially you give it a query, you connect your wallet, and then it will execute transactions for you. Is that
exactly? Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we sort of think, sorry, I don't know if this is a step ahead, but we sort of think that this is where the world is going. Like our view as a team is, at some point in the next, I don't know, maybe 10 years, we're just going to say to some sort of an AI agent, manage this money for me. And maybe we don't give it all of our money, maybe we do. But theoretically, AI is going to be able to make better financial decisions with our money than our meager human brains can. So so we think that's sort of where things are headed, is AI is going to be managing our money. There is some sort of a dystopian type future there somewhere where whose AI is faster, but we don't need to go there. But if you sort of take that one step back, AI is at least going to be or finding the best sources of yield and recommending it to you as a user, and you'll just have to click confirm. And if you sort of present value that one step, its AI is just going to be making sense of all this data and presenting it to you in some sort of a meaningful way. And those are sort of the three stages we see this progressing, and we're, as a startup team, building towards the first one at the moment.
So how are you implementing Intents? Because it's like Intents, a lot of people are talking about it. I think some implementations are more at the smart contract or at the blockchain level, and then you have protocols that are doing Intents more like with an AI agent. What is your view on these different approaches, and in what way are you guys implementing it specifically?
Yeah. So once again, going back to our tech stack, is we are just focusing on the front end. So there are a number of solvers out there that actually solve for the intents behind the scenes and execute the right transactions for the users. We are just in the the space of presenting the right intent to the right user. So the way that we actually think about intent, and I know there is some the disputes around what intents actually mean and at what layers of the tech stack. The way we look at intents is, what does the user say that they want to do? What if sort of the end state that the user wants to be in? Maybe the user just says, I want 20 Osmo or 20 Ethereum. Then that's the end state or the user's intent. The next prompt that an AI agent would probably ask is, you have these tokens, which ones would you like to swap to get those 20 Ethereum or whatever it is? So that's how we look at intents. Now, and we just provide that, as I mentioned, that user information. So prompting the user with another question to clarify their intent. However, how that intent gets solved on the back end, that's where our infrastructure providers come into play. They are the ones who can find the right route and actually execute the transaction.
So who are these infrastructure providers, and what is the relationship that they have to 42? Are you guys implementing some sort of a matching mechanism for those solvers, or is it completely independent of the protocol?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the infrastructure providers that we're using and we've been working with for quite a while is Skip Protocol, who have been amazing to work with. They are obviously, like, to a large degree, not maintaining, but improving a large portion of IBC or Cosmos usability. So they've been amazing to work with. Their sort of bread and butter in the future is, and I hope I'm stating this correctly, but is MEV attribution. So they essentially are sourcing the transactions and can essentially offer users the best prices based on what they're finding or how they're solving the transactions by being the order sourcing. And that's their bread and butter, is the MEV, and then they attribute some of that MEV back to us as a protocol. So yeah, there's Skip. Then there are a few others that we're also in early stage discussions with that are looking at sort of these solver marketplaces. So places like Skip, but essentially finding a marketplace of Skip protocols, for example. And I think there's a lot of development happening within the solver space.
Yeah, I mean, that's a space that I'm not super familiar with. Can you expand a little bit on the solver space and what are the different approaches here? I mean, I guess, like, what I'm interested in is there a market? Are there marketplaces for solvers that essentially allow any protocol to kind of plug into this pool of solvers that will then go and, like, be mercenaries and just do whatever, find like the best price or execute a transaction with the lowest slippage, or how does that space kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's as you're saying it is correct, at least according to my understanding of the space. And obviously, I'm not an expert in how the tech infrastructure actually works, and that's where we'd have to speak with teams like Skip or Anoma, for example. My understanding is each of these protocols have their solvers that actually go and try and execute transactions in a variety of ways, find the cheapest or most efficient way to do that, and once that's been proved to be the cheapest or most efficient way, that gets submitted and executed upon. Now, there's obviously probably, I don't want to say infinite, but a large number of ways that a transaction can be solved for, and I guess these solver marketplaces are the one step ahead, or sorry, one step above in the stack, where they're looking at all of the different solutions being proposed and actually selecting the best one.
Yeah.
So those are the teams that we're speaking with.
Right. Yeah. You just reminded me that, I guess, like, Anoma. It's been a while since I caught up with them, but I guess Anoma is sort of this model, right? This kind of solver marketplace model. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's an interesting idea because, like, I think if you take the solver idea to its extremes, right? Like, solvers will leverage any means necessary as long as it's economically viable to execute a transaction. So that could be, getting into some kind of murky MEV space, or maybe even resorting to nefarious activity in order to execute transactions, right? So like if a solver determines that there's a smart contract that has a bug, right? The solver may a non-ethical solver may opt to hack that smart contract in order to achieve the goals that is required by the transaction issuer. Is that something you think about?
Is how do the transactions get solved? If there's like what are the ethics around solving transactions? Um, I think about it in terms of like maybe it's like a slightly tangential thought, but in terms of the fact that obviously what we briefly discussed now is that AI is getting better and better. And I think that there's just going to be a point where there are not so many bugs to exploit because, I mean, either as you say, the solvers exploit them or the security protocols find them very quickly. So I think like if there is a hack, an inevitable hack, theoretically, there's going to be security protocols that deploy their own AI agents across chains and go find these sort of exploits. I mean, I guess once again we reach this sort of dystopian type future where it's like AI agents of the good guys versus AI agents of the exploiters, neck and neck, whoever can find them first. That's like the bounty, I guess. Yeah, I don't know where that's going, but I feel like all of these are steps in the right direction as an industry. Like we do need to. We've seen it before. Like I think the dollars hacked over the last few years. My understanding is it's significantly decreased as of recently because we were in this place as an industry where there were a lot of exploits, but a lot of the exploits that have sort of come about have now been patched up all over the place and people know where they are. And of course, as we carry on developing, there will be more vulnerabilities. But I think as an industry, we do see like a new tech and then we see the hacks happen and then over time it gets smoothed out again. Because it has to for an efficient industry to run.
Yeah. Thinking about the aggregation space. So in Ethereum, we've had DeFi aggregators or solvers for some time. Like, obviously like projects like 1inch and Paraswap and CowSwap. These are protocols that are meant to find the best price for a swap. And they have networks of solvers that are solving these transactions and finding the best price at the best slippage. Then you have protocols like Rango that go even further and execute cross-chain transactions. It will find the route for your tokens to basically go from one chain to another. Those have been really valuable for me. I've used them quite a bit to, if not execute transactions, at least find the best routes and the best price on trades. Sometimes I'll go and execute them myself or, but whatever. Like, I think these have created a lot of value in the space. But in Cosmos, aggregation is not a segment of the market that has a lot of competitors and like a lot of actors competing for users. Why is that? And taking a step back as you're building 42, what have you learned? What lessons have you learned from aggregators in the Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think on the Cosmos side, I mean, I am quite surprised about the lack of aggregators on the Cosmos side because it does seem like an industry or a segment ripe for aggregators because there are so many chains already. But maybe that also came with its own complexities in a sort of nascent industry or a nascent like cross-chain industry. Because obviously we're only starting to see the increase in cross-chain transactions recently as Ethereum's obviously scaling into L2s, which are cross-chain now. And yeah, I mean, I think previously it was always kind of difficult to get your assets across chains. Even just getting something from like, I guess, Ethereum to Solana, it was often like a few years ago, it was transferred to Coinbase and then to Solana to a large degree. Maybe there were other ways around it, but that's what most users were using. So I think this cross-chain Cosmos ecosystem almost just seemed too complicated for a lot of the aggregators. And then I guess Cosmos itself hasn't picked up enough TVL over the last few years to actually enhance the cross-chain or incentivize the cross-chain ecosystem. I think something else also very interesting on that front that I'm just thinking about now, and this is a problem we experienced building a cross-chain Cosmos app, is no ecosystem gives you grants or incentives to build it, because they're all like, well, you're not only building on our chain. So like we got turned down just from like grants all over the place, because all of these ecosystems are like, well, you're building across all the chains, so why should we give you the grant, kind of thing. Whereas obviously a lot of early stage projects manage to get grants for the ecosystem that they're building on. We luckily, through people like you, Seb, obviously invested in us, so we managed to still get it off the ground. Obviously, you guys see the vision. So I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen an influx of aggregators into Cosmos. And I kind of have, along the building journey, have looked back and been like, kind of looking over my shoulder, being like, no one is chasing us here. Like, that's kind of weird. So yeah, don't tell anyone about this. I'm kidding. So I think that was something interesting for us. As you've sort of alluded to now, is these sort of cross-chain protocols or aggregation protocols have been useful to you. You mentioned you've used them, and I think a lot of users use them. I think hardcore DeFi degens don't necessarily use them because they know their ways around. But I think if we do want to see mass adoption in the crypto industry, I think aggregators make sense. I mean, I've given a talk before on sort of aggregation theory, which I often say I don't think necessarily should be a theory, because it's just, what is an aggregator? And someone put the word theory at the end. But aggregators have existed for like thousands of years, from back in the day when there was a marketplace and you got your ham and your cheese and your bread all at the same place. And then like people like going to one place and viewing everything because it's convenient. And I think if there's one thing that Web 2 has taught us, is like, how do you just make things more convenient for people? And right now, Web 3 is just completely inconvenient for the regular user. And that's what we're trying to improve, is convenience. I think if there's any shot of us onboarding the next billion users into crypto, it needs to be significantly more convenient. Some of the other learnings on the Ethereum side, I think a lot of the people in crypto understand how to use crypto, but aggregators, I think, often struggled historically to find revenue, because crypto is obviously a very efficient industry. It's like if you start charging a 1% fee, people will just circumvent you, kind of thing. But I do see that as we onboard the next billion people into crypto, that this convenience fee will be given away because of the fact that it's more convenient. People will be more willing to pay it.
As more and more chains come online, I mean, obviously we're sort of in this world now of, thousands of blockchains potentially, and L2s and other forms of applications that are going to have their own sovereign execution environment, their own liquidity, their own also tooling and transaction types, right? Because we'll have, say, Cosmos app chains and EVM chains and Move chains and Solana VM chains. At which point does everything start to aggregate? Like, at which point does the aggregation threshold get so high that things start aggregating again and move into the convenient? Because I agree with you that right now, like in this current state of things are super inconvenient, and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to do anything in DeFi that involves more than just like swapping tokens on a DEX.
I think it was the ex-CEO of, I think it's Netscape. The ex-CEO of Netscape has a quote around like, all money or value is, or a significant amount of money or value is attributed through through bundling and then through unbundling. And I think there's always this constant in a lot of industries, sort of bundling and then unbundling. So yeah, I think when do we start seeing this sort of aggregation coming to fruition? I think soon. I mean, this was one of my major learnings in Dubai at Token 2049. I spoke with a lot of VCs and a lot of different people who are just like, how many more Bitcoin L2s can be funded? You know, like, and what are they going to do with all of them? So yeah, I think the industry is sort of ripe for at least some degree of a bundling soon.
What is the catalyst for that? Like, is it like the next bear market, or are there other catalysts other than just kind of the tightening of the screws that will launch this aggregation?
Yeah, I mean, I just like I think obviously like adding what the fuel for the fire of crypto is like to a large degree we need investment in these things to get to a good place where they actually do become convenient. And this fuel to the fire is, or this capital comes from VCs. So at some point we need a narrative shift, I would say, away from another Bitcoin L2 or Ethereum L2, and actually a narrative shift into the UX space and actually adding fuel to the fire that UX, people focusing on crypto UX can actually have enough financial runway and security to hire the best developers, to hire the best product managers, and actually build useful applications across these chains. I think for that to happen, we need to stop allowing potentially all of these sort of L2s or L1s to be launching token valuations at extremely high amounts where investors are incentivized to just invest in them because they can launch a token very quickly at $1 billion valuation. So I think as soon as potentially, and this is just a thought, if some of these L1s and L2s had to start doing these token launches or not finding product market fit for whatever reason and actually failing, that could result in a re-attribution of capital.
Yeah, I mean, the incentives in crypto are a little bit perverse, and I think people don't talk about this, but there is this capital that is willing to be deployed in projects at a very early stage at valuations that broadly don't reflect the value created by the companies.
Yeah.
Those products launch and will sort of rally other investors and specifically retail investors to also buy into these ideas. And those who generally make out, I think, the best out of this situation are the investors and VCs. And I say this as a guy running a fund, like, who had access early, are able to divest those tokens with the help of professional market makers and through like OTC deals and this sort of thing, and professional DeFi users to some extent. But the valuations, even in the depth of the bear market, were still like quite high. Like, if you look at any VC deal in Web 2, valuations are like 10 times less, right, or more than in crypto. When you're talking about pre-seed or seed stage companies, and sometimes even companies that have actual revenue, right? And we're talking about companies that actually are making money versus these kind of protocols that are basically still at pitch deck level, or very little has been created. What do you think is the if we take a step back even further now, like, what is the catalyst you think for that entire paradigm to shift, for these incentives to really sort of come back to reality? I mean, I guess we're talking about more macro level sort of topics here, where this liquidity is coming from somewhere. Like this VC money is coming from somewhere. It's coming from LPs. It's coming from investors who are willing to take those risks and deploy like large amounts of capital. I mean, like, how long can this go, basically?
Yeah.
My question.
No, it's interesting. So it's like Yeah, it's pretty much like how long will exit liquidity be around for, almost you're
Yeah.
asking. But so I mean, I think like my understanding at least is that a lot of the sort of the traditional Web2 valuations are less because of the long time to a liquidity event. So
This is also true.
I
Yeah.
I think on average it's like 7 years to IPO or whatever it is, whereas crypto it's kind of like 1 to 2 years almost on average, or maybe three. So yeah, I guess there it's like less than half the time. But the thing is, once these Web2 companies do IPO and have their liquidity event, it's because these companies are ready to have their equity or shares sold to the public. They've made revenue, they've passed all the checks and balances, they've had the audits done, and they're actually ready to do it. Whereas crypto, as we mentioned, is sort of like oftentimes you have a pitch deck or an idea and you can sell a token for a few $1 billion. But someone is buying that token on the other side. And that's why I say, like, how long will that exit liquidity be there for? Because these people that have bought all these tokens for all these projects which have failed or not found product market fit are not going to be there forever. So at some point, token launches are not going to be as highly valuable, or will need to have found more product market fit beforehand. So yeah, because the guy sitting in, I don't know, Africa or Bangalore is not going to be investing in every single token launch if he's sitting with a worthless bag of tokens that he's previously bought. So yeah, I think at some point, either maybe through regulation, where and this pains me to say it, I guess, where potentially at some point all token launches will need to go through regulation just to protect the end investor from these sort of nefarious token launches, um, or the people buying the tokens just don't have the money anymore to do it, or we need to see more of an idea to do it. And someone actually mentioned to me recently, they said sort of something along the lines like, in 2017 you just needed a pitch deck to do a token, then in
Yeah.
2021 you just needed a website, and in 2023 you kind of need or 2024 you need an app out there, and I think it's sort of tending towards longer time horizons potentially. I'm not sure though.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense, and I think like investors have also become uh, more demanding of projects. So in 2017, you just needed a pitch deck, and people were just basically raising money by putting an Ethereum address out, and then later came the SAFT, and then at some point investors started demanding equity, right, in the form of a safe agreement with token warrants. Sorry if this is a bit inside baseball for people listening, but I think it is also to some extent the investors demanding more and more out of the portfolio companies that they're investing in. Uh, but yeah, I think if you compare that to Web2, the threshold is much lower in terms of valuation versus what's actually sort of produced at the for the valuation. So yeah, I mean the liquidity aspect, the time to liquidity, I think really is a huge part of it, and so people are willing to take that risk. Yeah, not to make this all about investing, but wanted to also talk a little bit about the stack and how 42 looks under the hood. So yeah, tell me a bit about the architecture and specifically your use of Cosmosm.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we spoke about this briefly. Well, I spoke about it briefly earlier in the call, but pretty much we're focused at the moment. We've moved away from doing any Cosmosm ourselves at this point in time. We had deployed smart contracts on a few chains, but for a variety of different reasons have actually moved away from that and are now solely focusing on UX. So we ourselves are not doing any Cosmosm. We do have infrastructure providers that we're working with that are deploying
Okay.
Cosmosm smart
Okay,
contracts.
that wasn't clear. So basically, 42 is purely a front end. There's yeah, you mentioned this earlier, but there are actually no contracts that you guys are deploying or interacting with.
Yes. And I think we've actually found a lot of clarity in as a team in doing that. It's like we we're not distracted by a variety of things. We just want to improve user experience. Like that is our sole focus. How do we make user experience as good as possible? And we don't need to worry about our own audits. We don't need to worry about the legal consequences of managing users' funds. Yeah.
So when thinking about UI and UX in crypto, I think one of the main pain points is the wallet. How do we get to a point where we can eliminate this additional UI component so that users are interacting directly with the website the way they would do in Web 2? Are there any real advancements in this direction, or are we going to be continuously having to work with this sort of second factor UI that generally is, I think, pretty bad and just degrades the entire user experience of using DeFi?
So I think that my opinion is that there's a few ways that this could go about sort of evolving. One way is the wallets start building towards DeFi themselves, which we've already started seeing. A number of wallets are starting to offer all sorts of DeFi yield or swap opportunities. However, what happens there is obviously, as we know, or at least in the current state of crypto, there's a few wallets or a few sort of, I'd say, brands or protocols of wallets that hold the majority of the crypto funds, and those wallets are in a significantly better position than the others. What we're going for is allowing any wallet to connect to us, to FortyTwo. So just like we're aggregating across DeFi protocols, we're also aggregating across wallets where any wallet can connect to us, and allowing users to simply just sign transactions through a wallet, through their wallet. Where does this end up going? I'm not necessarily an expert in the wallet space. I know there is a lot of stuff happening there. Been speaking with teams that are doing sort of like key management solutions, etc., and potentially at some point in the future there is an option for FortyTwo to offer like at least a key management solution or our own native FortyTwo wallet.
What do you think of the whole Osmosis account abstraction idea? And they want to build account abstraction into the chain so that effectively every account is a smart account. The idea is also for existing accounts to have the ability to be converted into smart accounts. And then I think there's even an idea around having the account being managed directly in the browser. Now, I think this introduces some security issues because obviously like the browser DOM is not a sort of protected space, but I think there are some ideas there around how basically you could have a wallet UI directly in a browser, and so not having to use a third-party wallet, maybe for transactions up to a certain threshold, and then the chain would enforce transactions with a higher threshold to be like double signed or like signed with a second factor. Do you think this is something that you guys could implement to really improve the UX around using FortyTwo?
I mean, I think that is probably the way forward, especially as we start, as we mentioned in the beginning of this call, allocating more and more of our funds toward AI agents. It's like we're definitely not at a point where we're just going to give 100% of our assets to an AI agent to manage. So I think on that front, that should sit natively, potentially within the FortyTwo solution or within the browser itself, and actually allow users to transact with a certain allocated amount without a signature. And I think this is the case even outside of crypto with other sort of AI based industries. Like if we look at self-driving cars, it's like we don't give self-driving cars full autonomy to just drive anywhere initially, because there will be deaths, and there have been deaths because there are mistakes. But it's like we allow them to drive in these areas at these times to begin with, and slowly over time, as it becomes a more trusted technology, then we start giving it more leeway.
Yeah. So FortyTwo recently launched in beta. So how can people use the product today? What is possible to do with the current beta product, and what's the roadmap to kind of a mainnet production launch?
Yeah, so we launched in a closed beta a few months ago, and we've just been testing that out continuously. We are just about ready for our open beta launch, and currently users can start staking across any Cosmos-based chain with auto compounding. They can liquid stake any Cosmos-based asset through FortyTwo. They can swap across any Cosmos chain, which includes, we've also included in the swaps, swaps to Ethereum, a bunch of ETH2s as well as Solana. We've got lending being deployed probably today or tomorrow. Then we've got some interchain strategies also coming out soon. We've also got fiat on-ramps natively in the app, and then the last product which we also just deployed recently was sort of an airdrop farming tool that allows you to become eligible for a variety of different airdrops around the Cosmos ecosystem. So we plan on launching that imminently. Currently, we're just in the process of tying up some legal things, doing a re-registration, and then we're ready to launch, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we're aiming to launch around mid-May, if all goes according to plan. And if users want to jump on the closed beta before then, reach out to me. They required at the moment to submit a Neutron address. But yeah, that's it. I think that answered your questions.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Daniel, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And where can people go to start using the beta? What's the website?
Yeah, so the website is www.forty2.money, and that's 42 spelled out, FORTYTWO.money. Otherwise, check us out on Twitter. We're 42 spelled out _money. Look forward to being in touch.
Great.
And one more thing, just by the way, Sebastian, thank you so much for taking the faith of investing in us in our pre-seed round. We managed to close our pre-seed during the bear market, which was obviously super difficult. And I remember having the call with you where you decided to invest, and you sort of were like, I can't believe you're still here. You're still building. We're in, which I appreciated that leap of faith and everything you guys and the Interop team has done for us.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure working with you guys, and I think from the beginning, one of the things that I felt was really attractive about FortyTwo was this is a product that I actually want to use, and to the extent that it's the beta is usable today, use it to do some staking and this sort of thing, but I'm like, I can't wait until this thing is fully integrated into all blockchains and it can just be managing all of my sort of portfolio positions, and I can use an AI agent to manage my portfolio and not have to, think about, I need to move tokens from Ethereum over here and then I got to move them here. And it's just like, the mental lift required to do anything in DeFi has become so high just because of the complexity of everything. And I think we need products like this to move the needle in terms of how easy it would be to use DeFi. So yeah, super, super bullish on FortyTwo.
Cool.
Great. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.